I believe life is always asking questions, and the way you show up, the way you walk into a room, the way you present yourself to the world, it answers them before you ever speak. Here's the question: what is your appearance saying about you right now? And don't just think in terms of clothes and grooming. I'm talking about everything: the way you sit, the way you stand, the way your eyes meet another person's eyes, the way your handshake feels, firm or flimsy, intentional or accidental. Because whether you realize it or not, you're telling a story. You're broadcasting your philosophy without opening your mouth. Your appearance is a walking billboard of your internal world. And the truth is, most people don't like what their billboard is saying. Now, I know this might sting a little. It should, because somewhere deep down, you've already felt it. That quiet frustration, that sense that something's off, that people don't take you seriously, that opportunities pass you by, that no one really sees the potential you're carrying. And you're right, they don't. Because you've never demanded to be seen, not with volume, not with ego, but with intention. And that's what appearance is. It's intention made visible. It's discipline wrapped in fabric. It's confidence pressed into a collar. It's the decision to walk out the front door as if life has meaning. Because it does, and so do you. But let's be clear, this isn't about fashion. It's not about impressing others with brand names or chasing trends. That's vanity. That's noise. What I'm talking about is something deeper. It's personal philosophy made visible. It's self-respect turned outward. When you stand up straight, when you choose sharp over sloppy, clean over careless, focused over distracted, you're not just dressing up, you're leveling up. You're reminding yourself and the world that you're becoming someone, that you take yourself seriously enough to prepare, that you believe in your own future enough to look like it belongs to you. See, people confuse appearance with arrogance, but I say it's alignment. You align your outer world with the inner commitment you've made. And when that alignment happens, something powerful begins to shift. You walk into places you once tiptoed through. You speak with clarity instead of apology. You meet eyes instead of avoiding them. Because when you look like someone worth knowing, you begin to feel like someone worth becoming. That's not magic, it's philosophy. And once you start to live it, you'll never want to go back. So let me ask you again, what is your appearance saying about you? Does it say you're ready or that you're hiding? Does it say you're climbing or that you've given up? Does it say, here's someone who values life? Or here's someone drifting through it? You don't need $1 million to look like you matter. You need one thing, a new standard. And once you raise it, your entire world begins to rise with it. Let's talk about that philosophy. Because behind every outfit, behind every slouched posture or confident stance, there's a belief system shaping the result. If we can upgrade that belief, if we can plant the right philosophy, we can upgrade everything the world sees. So let's start there. Let's go to the root. Let's talk about the hidden philosophy behind appearance, because that's where the real change begins. You see, every day you walk out the door, you're not just stepping into the world, you're stepping into your philosophy. Whether you know it or not, how you dress, how you groom, how you carry yourself, it's all rooted in what you believe about yourself and what you believe about life. That's what I mean when I say appearance is a reflection of philosophy. It's not just about fabric or polish. It's about values, about what you think matters, about what you think you are worth. People think philosophy is only something you write in a book or hang on the wall. But I say philosophy is what you do every day. It's how you eat. It's how you speak. It's how you show up. And yes, it's how you look. Now, here's the uncomfortable truth. Even sloppiness is a philosophy. Some people say, it doesn't matter what I wear, or people should accept me as I am. Sounds noble, but really it's an excuse. It's a belief that says, I don't value presentation. I don't care about preparation. I won't rise to meet the moment. That's not humility. That's neglect. That's not authenticity. That's avoidance. Because the truth is, how you appear is a decision. It's a vote you cast for the future you're trying to create. You can't say you want success and dress like defeat. You can't say you want to influence others and show up like you're hiding from yourself. I remember a time in my early years when I didn't have much. My clothes were out of date. My shoes scuffed. I walked into rooms hoping nobody would notice me. And do you know what I got? Exactly that. Nobody noticed me because I wasn't sending a signal of value. I was hoping life would reward me for what I felt inside, but I hadn't yet taken the step to reflect that belief outward. And once I realized that, I changed. Not with money, but with effort. I pressed my shirt, I polished my shoes, I stood taller, I looked people in the eye, and slowly the world began to respond differently. Not because I became someone else, but because I finally began showing who I really was. Here's what I want you to understand. Appearance is not about putting on a mask. It's about removing the barrier between who you are inside and how you show up outside. It's about closing the gap between the life you dream about and the life you live in front of others. When your philosophy says, I am worthy, I am capable, I am disciplined, your appearance should echo that truth. Every morning becomes a chance to send that message to yourself first and then to the world. And don't think for a second this is about impressing strangers. This is about creating alignment. Because when you start treating yourself like you matter, everything else begins to shift. You eat better, you speak clearer, you stop tolerating low standards. And here's the key. It starts with a decision to upgrade your personal philosophy from "I hope things improve" to "I'm preparing for things to improve." That decision changes the way you look at your closet. It changes how you trim your beard or comb your hair. It changes how you walk into a room, not to demand respect, but to reflect it. So if you've been telling yourself it doesn't matter, if you've been hiding behind comfort or laziness or excuses, I want to offer you a better philosophy. One that says, I am not casual with my future. I am not indifferent to my potential. I will not look like someone who's already given up. I will prepare, I will polish, I will present myself as someone who is rising, not for applause, but for alignment. Because how I show up is how I live, and how I live is what I believe. That's the hidden philosophy behind appearance. And once you begin to see it that way, you'll never be able to just throw something on again. You'll understand that every wrinkle speaks. Every sloppy detail whispers a story. And from this day forward, you get to choose the story. Now let's talk about how your appearance is sending messages, whether you know it or not. Because every time you enter a room, you're speaking, even in silence. Let's make sure that message serves you. Let's talk about what people are reading before you ever say a word. You know, people think that communication only begins when the mouth opens, but that's not true. The truth is, long before you say a word, you've already spoken. You've already told the room what to expect. You've already made a promise or issued a warning. You've already declared, I take myself seriously, or whispered, I've given up. Your appearance is a message, and the world is always reading. Now here's the problem. Most people don't know what message they're sending. They don't realize that the scuffed shoes say, I stopped caring a while ago. That the wrinkled shirt says, I don't plan ahead. That the slouch in their shoulder says, I'm not expecting anything good today. But the world hears it. The marketplace hears it. And it responds accordingly. Let me be clear, this isn't about impressing other people. It's about honoring yourself. It's about broadcasting who you've chosen to become. When I walk into a room, I want the room to know, before I sit down, before I introduce myself, that I am ready, that I came prepared, that I care, that I'm someone worth trusting. And that doesn't come from ego. It comes from intention, because everything communicates. Everything. The way you walk, the way you shake hands, the way your eyes connect or don't, the way your coat fits, the way your shoes are tied, all of it together forms a signal. And that signal is either raising your chances or lowering them. Think about this. When you meet someone new, how long does it take you to form a first impression? 10 seconds? 5? Sometimes just one glance. That's human nature. We're wired to assess quickly. We're wired to interpret signals. And if your signal says casual, careless, unkempt, unfocused, don't be surprised when opportunities pass you by. You might be brilliant, you might be kind, you might be trustworthy, but if your appearance says otherwise, the world rarely sticks around long enough to find out. Now, this doesn't mean you need to be flashy. It doesn't mean you need a designer suit or the newest shoes. That's not the point. The point is, are you clean? Are you pressed? Are you polished? Are you walking with purpose? Are you showing the world that your life has structure, that your mind has discipline, that your spirit has clarity? Because when you do that consistently, the world leans in. People want to know what you know. They want to hear what you have to say. They believe you have something to offer before you've even spoken. That's the power of presence. That's the power of preparing yourself with excellence. I remember one time walking into a business meeting with a man who had all the credentials, all the degrees, all the technical knowledge. But he was dressed like he had nothing to offer. Disheveled shirt, shoes worn thin, posture slouched. Do you know what happened? The client turned their attention to someone else in the room, someone less experienced, but sharply presented. The decision had already been made in silence, not because of bias or unfairness, but because of perceived credibility. Because the message was already received, this man does not prepare. And in a world full of options, people gravitate toward what they trust, and trust starts with the signals you send. Now here's the good news. You can change your message today. You don't need permission. You don't need a big budget. You just need a new decision. You can wake up tomorrow and say, no more lazy presentation. No more sending the wrong message. You can shine your shoes. You can fix your posture. You can take 5 extra minutes and walk out of your home like the day matters. Because it does. And when you start doing that, something shifts. Not just in how others see you, but in how you see yourself. So from now on, I want you to ask this question every morning. What message am I sending today? And let that question shape your preparation. Let it guide your wardrobe. Let it influence your posture, your energy, your mindset. Because once your appearance is aligned with your highest philosophy, you won't need to shout. You won't need to chase. You'll be magnetic. You'll be prepared. And the world will respond accordingly. Now that we know the message, let's look at what happens when that message is neglected. Because the cost of poor appearance isn't just missed respect, it's missed reward. Let's talk about that. It's easy to dismiss appearance as surface, to write it off as unimportant, to convince yourself that what truly matters is what's inside. And yes, of course, what's inside matters. But if you neglect the outside, what's inside often gets lost. Because neglect, no matter where it shows up, isn't neutral. It compounds, it leaks, it spreads, and it always costs more than you think. Now, some people say, I don't care what others think. And that might sound noble for a moment. But let me tell you something hard and true. If you don't care what others see, don't be surprised when they don't see you, because the world doesn't reward intention. It rewards preparation. And neglect, my friend, is the opposite of preparation. Let's get honest about what neglect costs. Financially, it's enormous. You might not even realize how many opportunities you've missed simply because someone scanned your appearance and decided, not ready, not sharp, not serious. They won't tell you. They won't send you an email and say, we were considering you, but your presence made us doubt. They'll just move on, quietly, without confrontation, and you're left wondering why doors aren't opening, why the phone isn't ringing, why things aren't changing. But the answer might be found not in your resume, but in your reflection, because your appearance is not just visual, it's visceral. It communicates energy, alertness, care, credibility, and when that's absent, income follows the absence. But it's not just about money. Let's talk about respect. Respect, like opportunity, is rarely given in full before it's earned in part. And one of the fastest ways to earn initial respect is to demonstrate that you respect yourself. When you walk into a room and your shirt is wrinkled, your shoes are dirty, your posture lazy, and your energy scattered, you've already said, I didn't think this mattered enough to prepare. That might not be the story in your head, but it's the story your presence is telling. And people don't trust sloppiness. Not because they're cruel, but because they're cautious. Because in a world of choices, sharpness stands out and dullness fades away. And then there's the cost you pay privately, the emotional cost. Because neglect doesn't just steal from your opportunities. It steals from your pride. Not the arrogant kind of pride. I'm talking about the healthy pride of a person who knows they've shown up well. There is a kind of quiet dignity that comes from looking in the mirror and saying, I'm ready, I'm focused, I'm aligned. But when that dignity is gone, when you've let standards slip too far, when you've accepted mediocrity in the mirror, something in you starts to decay. You stop expecting more. You stop preparing. You stop stretching. You begin to shrink. And that shrinking shows up everywhere, in your work, in your relationships, in your dreams. Because what starts in the mirror rarely stays there. I often say, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. But the opposite is also true. Failure is nothing more than a few small neglects repeated every day. You don't wake up one morning and find your life off course. You drift there slowly, a missed haircut, a skipped polish, a lazy morning, a nobody's watching mindset. And before long, the mirror stops inspiring you. The wardrobe becomes random. The standards become blurred, and then the world treats you exactly as you've taught it to treat you, with casualness, with indifference, with dismissal. So what's the solution? Start caring again. Not with guilt, not with shame, with decision. Decide that you will no longer pay the price of neglect. Decide that your reflection will reflect your future. Decide that your appearance will be your ally, not your liability. You don't have to become a model. You just have to become consistent. You just have to return to the philosophy that says, I matter, this moment matters, how I show up matters. Because when that belief returns, so does your pride, so does your clarity, so does your power. And here's what I want you to remember. You can't afford to neglect what the world notices first. Your appearance isn't everything, but it's the first thing. And if it's out of alignment, everything else you're trying to build will carry that friction. But if you'll bring it into order, if you'll raise it with discipline, the rest of your life will begin to rise with it. Let's talk now about what that upward movement looks like. Not in theory, but in principle. Let's talk about respect. Let's talk about refinement. Because those two ideas, when they meet in your daily habits, create a presence that commands attention without needing to ask. There's a principle that changed my life once I finally understood it, and it's this. The world tends to respect the person who first respects himself. Not the person who demands attention with noise or force, but the one who quietly lives at a higher standard. You see, respect isn't something you request, it's something you radiate. And refinement is the tool that helps you radiate it. Now, when I say refinement, I don't mean extravagance. I don't mean turning your life into a photo shoot. I mean care. I mean order. I mean clarity. Refinement is simply the practice of removing what's sloppy and replacing it with what's sharp. It's a decision to turn your appearance into a statement, not of ego, but of self-respect. Every day you walk past a mirror. Some days you glance and keep going. Other days you stop. But I want to ask you, when you stop and look, who do you see? Is it someone you admire, someone you'd follow, someone you'd invest in? Or do you see someone who's let time, fatigue, and neglect begin to blur the edges of their promise? That's what refinement addresses. It says, let's bring it back. Not by buying something new, but by becoming someone better. Refinement is the quiet discipline of wiping off what doesn't belong and revealing what always did. It's trimming the extra, ironing the crease, polishing the intention. It's showing yourself and the world, I haven't stopped improving. Now, here's what most people don't realize. Refinement has nothing to do with status and everything to do with standards. You could have a closet full of simple clothes, but if they're pressed, if they fit, if they're chosen with care, they speak louder than labels ever could. Because refinement doesn't shout, it whispers. But the world hears it. You walk into a coffee shop and people sense it. You step into a meeting and people feel it. You don't need to talk about it. It walks ahead of you. It introduces you. It sets the tone. And that tone matters, especially in a noisy world where so many people have given up on their standards. Think of it this way. Refinement is proof of care. It says, I took the time. And if you'll take the time on the little things, others trust that you'll take the time on the big things. That's why it pays. That's why it opens doors. That's why it multiplies influence. People say, don't judge a book by its cover, but they do, and they will. So don't waste energy fighting the principle, use it. Let your cover be excellent. Let your presence be a quiet promise that what's inside is even better. I'll tell you a little test I started using years ago when I was trying to raise my own standard. Every morning, after getting dressed, I'd look in the mirror and ask, would I hire me? That's it. Not, would I admire me or like me? Just, would I invest in me today based on what I see? And if the answer was anything less than yes, I'd fix it. Not for vanity, but for alignment. Because I didn't want to ask the world to bet on me while I showed up like a gamble. I wanted to walk in already proving I was worth their time, their trust, their opportunity. And let me tell you, that little mirror test did more for my income than 100 pep talks ever could. And maybe that's the turning point for you too. Maybe today is the day you stop telling yourself it doesn't matter. Maybe it's the day you decide to live in alignment. To let your outer world rise up and match the inner voice that says, I'm capable of more. Because you are. But the world can't see your heart. The world sees your habits, and refinement is the habit of respect. When you refine your appearance, you don't just look better, you live better. You treat your day differently. You walk into opportunities with a different energy. You draw people to you who operate at higher levels. And here's the secret. Those people notice the details. They respect the polish. They trust the discipline behind it. So if you want to be trusted with more, start by refining what you already have. Start by showing that you care. That's what refinement is. A visible declaration that you still believe in your future. And when you live that declaration daily, your environment will begin to shift. The people around you will begin to shift. And your income, well, that might be the first thing to respond. Let's talk about that next. Because there's a direct line between how you look and how you earn. Let's connect the dots between image and income. You'll be surprised how much of your potential has been sitting in your closet, waiting for you to take it seriously. Now let's make it practical. Let's talk dollars. Because the moment you start refining your appearance, the world doesn't just compliment you. It starts compensating you differently. Why? Because the world doesn't pay you for your time. It pays you for your value. And value is first perceived before it's ever proven. If you don't look like someone who's valuable, people won't ask to find out. They won't sit through your explanation. They won't investigate your potential. They'll simply move on to someone who already looks the part. That might sound harsh, but I didn't make the rule. I just learned how to work with it. Image leads to perception. Perception opens the door. And once the door is open, your preparation and character must walk through. But the first key is still appearance. You can have all the skills in the world, but if you show up disorganized, unshaven, poorly dressed, you're sending the marketplace a message. I'm not serious. I'm not trustworthy. I'm not ready. And do you know what the marketplace does with people who aren't ready? It underpays them. It ignores them. It skips them. Not because of injustice, but because of presentation. You're not being judged unfairly. You're being judged quickly. And when things move quickly, you must learn how to control the cues you give off. The good news is, appearance is one of the cues that's entirely under your control. You don't need a promotion, a degree, or anyone's permission to sharpen how you show up. You can change the perception starting today, and your income will often rise to meet it. I've seen this in every industry, from corporate to sales, from retail to entrepreneurship. The individual who walks in with polish, with presence, with a clean, purposeful appearance, they get more second chances, more yeses, more trust. Not because they're better, but because they look ready, they look responsible, they look aligned. I knew a young man once who worked in direct sales. When he started, he was sharp, enthusiastic, but casual. Loose shirt, dusty shoes, phone screen cracked, business cards bent. His results were average. Then one day he came to a seminar and heard me say, "Don't just act the part, look the part." Something clicked. He went home, pressed his shirts, replaced his shoes, repaired his phone, and got new cards. And guess what? His numbers doubled in 60 days. Nothing changed in his skills, only in how people received him. Now, I'm not saying a $500 suit makes you rich, but I am saying it might open a door that your $5 attitude won't, because how you dress is a signal of how seriously you're taking the opportunity. And people want to work with, buy from, and promote people who treat things seriously. So when you walk in dressed for the life you want, not the life you've settled for, you begin to position yourself differently in every conversation. Confidence rises, negotiation posture strengthens, eye contact locks in, and people can feel it. They might not say it, but they sense it. Here's someone who prepares. Here's someone I can trust with responsibility. Here's someone I can recommend. And you know what happens next? Opportunities begin to find you. Clients begin to refer you. Interviews turn into offers. People say yes more quickly. Why? Because you've aligned your image with your value. You've closed the gap between what you believe inside and what the world sees outside. That's not manipulation. That's stewardship. You are stewarding your appearance as an asset, not just as decoration. You are showing the world what kind of return they can expect by looking at how you manage what you already have. And that, let me tell you, is one of the fastest ways to increase your income. Signal higher value through refined presence. So if you've been waiting for a raise, a break, a promotion, ask yourself, have you been showing up like someone who belongs at that level? Not just in competence, but in appearance? Because the answer might not be more effort. It might be better signals. Start there. Elevate your image. Watch what happens to your influence, your confidence, and yes, your wallet. It all starts with small shifts that send big signals. That's where we're headed next. Simple, daily changes that create a whole new conversation about who you are and what you're worth. Let's dive in. The good news about this journey is that it doesn't require massive overhaul. Most of the time, it starts with small shifts, subtle changes that send loud signals. A man doesn't become respectable because he suddenly bought a new wardrobe. He becomes respectable because every detail begins to say, I care. That care, repeated daily, becomes discipline. That discipline becomes presence. And presence, that unmistakable air of excellence, is what the world responds to. Let me show you just how simple it can be to start signaling strength. Let's begin with your shoes. I've always believed that how you treat your shoes tells me how you treat yourself. You can take the time to shine them, or you can let them decay. But don't forget, your shoes hit the ground with every step. They're the foundation of your presence. A man who walks on worn soles may be sending a message that he's been dragging his feet in life. But a man who shines his shoes before stepping out isn't just protecting leather. He's sharpening his self-image. He's reminding himself that where he's going matters, that how he moves through the world matters. So polish those shoes, not for vanity, but for vision. Next, your face. That's your billboard. That's where your soul introduces itself. And you may think, well, I don't care about shaving or trimming or moisturizing. But it's not about grooming trends. It's about order. If your face is unkempt, the world assumes your mind might be too. But when you take time to trim the beard, smooth the skin, or show freshness, you're not just presenting a face, you're presenting a life. And people respect that. You become someone who finishes what he starts, who tends to the details, who has enough discipline to command even what grows naturally. Now let's move to the shirt, the simplest, most silent communicator. You can tell the world, I've got big dreams. But if your shirt is wrinkled, what you're really saying is, I haven't thought it through. When you iron your shirt, you're pressing your philosophy into fabric. You're preparing the stage for how others will experience you. You're showing intention. I've never seen a wrinkled shirt on a man who leads others with clarity. That's not a coincidence. It's a cause. So take 5 minutes, press it, steam it, care about it, because it matters more than you think. And don't forget posture. The way you carry yourself is the banner of your belief system. Shoulders back says confidence. Chin up says vision. A firm step says readiness. You don't need to say a word. Just walk in like someone who has direction. Stand like someone with roots. Sit like someone who commands his space. The body speaks. And when your body speaks alignment, people listen. A casual slouch may feel comfortable, but it whispers indifference. Straighten up and you begin to whisper leadership. And finally, scent. That's right. I said it. Your scent enters the room before you do. A clean, fresh, intentional scent says, I respect this moment. An unpleasant or careless odor says, I haven't prepared. It doesn't take wealth to smell good. It takes thought. It takes hygiene. It takes effort. And effort, even invisible, earns dividends. People may not comment, but they will remember. And they will associate you with sharpness or sloppiness based on how you handled the invisible. These small things, the shine, the trim, the press, the posture, the scent, they are not random. They are symbols, and symbols are how humans process trust. When you align the symbols of your life with excellence, you attract the outcomes of excellence. People stop seeing you as a gamble and begin seeing you as a guarantee. Not because you promised anything, but because you proved it silently. So don't underestimate the little changes. In fact, those are the most powerful ones. They're repeatable, they're affordable, and they're transformational. When done daily, they become a rhythm of self-respect, a ritual of forward motion. And before long, people begin to treat you as a person on the rise, because that's exactly what you've become. Now let's go deeper. These outer shifts are the start, but now we must develop an inner code, a personal standard that defines what you will and won't allow in your life. Because once your standard is set, everything else begins to align with it. Let's build that next. A man without a personal standard is like a ship without a rudder. He drifts. He goes wherever the tide carries him, reacting to circumstances rather than commanding them. And I want to tell you something that may sound simple, but is absolutely life-changing. The way you look each day is a reflection of the standard you've accepted. Not what you say you value, not what you hope for, but what you actually allow. So if you don't like what you see in the mirror, don't blame the mirror. Go back and examine the standard. Now, what is a standard? A standard is a self-imposed rule. It's not enforced from the outside. It's not dictated by culture. It's not something you wait for permission to follow. A true personal standard comes from within. It's the invisible boundary line between the acceptable and the unacceptable in your world. And when you raise that line, everything else must rise with it. Your habits, your tone, your energy, your results. The question is, what will you no longer tolerate from yourself? There came a time in my life when I realized that I had allowed casualness to creep in, not because I didn't care, but because I had never clearly decided what I stood for. I had never said, this is the level I operate at, no matter who's watching, no matter how I feel. And so I started drifting. A lazy morning here, a skipped shave there, a cluttered bag, a late arrival, all of it small, all of it excused. But over time, those little exceptions became the norm. And one day I looked up and realized I wasn't losing because I lacked ability. I was losing because I lacked a personal standard. I had no code. So I sat down and wrote one. Nothing fancy. Just a list of principles I would live by, starting with how I showed up. Pressed shirt, shined shoes, on time, eye contact, clean energy, present in the moment. That list became my filter. Before leaving the house, I asked, am I aligned with the man I've decided to be? And if the answer was no, I made the change. Not because someone told me to, but because I refused to lie to my future. I had decided I don't get to show up like someone who's given up and still expect to be treated like someone with promise. Let me tell you, when you set that kind of standard, life changes. People notice. They can't explain it, but they feel it. You move through the day with more intention. You choose your words with more precision. You carry yourself with a quiet authority because you're not just reacting anymore, you're living from a decision. And here's what's beautiful. Your standard becomes a magnet. It pulls the right people to you. It filters out the ones who can't meet it. It makes your path clearer and your reputation sharper because people trust those who trust themselves. So how do you set your own standard? Start by asking, if I walked into a room and didn't know me, what would I assume based on how I'm dressed? Based on how I walk? Based on how I carry my energy? Be honest. Don't justify, just observe. Then define who you want to be, not someday, now. Write it down. I dress like someone with vision. I speak like someone with clarity. I show up like someone who's going somewhere. That's your standard. Not an outfit, but an identity. And once it's written, live it. Even when no one's watching, especially then, because that's where integrity is built, in the quiet, unseen hours when no applause is coming and no praise is given. That's where your standard becomes real. And if you'll keep it real long enough, eventually the world will rise to meet it. They'll see in you what you first decided to see in yourself. Not perfection, but presence. Not arrogance, but alignment. Not performance, but principle. Let me ask you, what do you represent? Decide. Declare it, then dress like it, walk like it, speak like it. Because when your appearance matches your philosophy, you don't have to chase opportunity, it recognizes you. And now that you've defined the standard, let's talk about how to maintain it. Not once in a while, but every day. That's where true sophistication begins. Let's keep going. Sophistication isn't something you wear on a special occasion. It's something you live daily. It's not a matter of price, trend, or glamour. No, sophistication is doing ordinary things exceptionally well. It's the polish in the small things that tells the world, I'm not casual about my life. Sophistication is not the tuxedo you wear once a year. It's the habit of excellence you wear every morning. And here's the beauty. Anyone can practice it. Rich or poor, beginner or master, young or old, it's a mindset before it's a wardrobe. It's a decision before it's a purchase. I remember one evening I was having dinner at a fine restaurant. The waiter, sharp young man, attentive, respectful. But just as the meal was about to start, I slipped him a tip in advance, not as a bribe, but as a signal. I said, "This is for the service you're going to give." He straightened up, smiled wide, and gave the most exceptional service I'd ever seen. Why? Because I didn't wait to react. I set the tone. That's what sophistication does. It sets the tone. And you don't need to be served to do it. You can walk into every room, every meeting, every morning and say, "This is how I do things," with care, with class, with clarity. Let's make this real. Sophistication shows up in how you shake hands. Firm, intentional, present. Not limp, not rushed, not distracted. It shows up in how you listen. Eye contact, head nodding, presence. It's not just appearance, it's attention. It's being fully there. Sophistication shows up in how you treat a receptionist, how you speak to a barista, how you handle the waiter who brings the wrong drink. Because anyone can be sharp when the cameras are on. Sophistication means you're sharp even when the audience is small or absent. You're not performing for praise. You're honoring your own standard. Think about how you enter a room. Do you rush in, flustered, on your phone, apologizing? Or do you arrive early, composed, focused? Do you look around with awareness or slump into the first chair you see? These things speak volumes, and people hear them, not with their ears, but with their instincts. They say, here's someone who carries themselves with structure. Here's someone who notices, who finishes, who respects. Sophistication is earned, and it's earned in repetition. Now, I'm not talking about being stiff or robotic. I'm not saying you need to walk around quoting philosophy and polishing your shoes every 2 hours. I'm saying pick a few areas and elevate them. Take something you already do and do it better. Start with your entrance, your preparation, your thank you notes, your signature, the way you wrap a gift, the way you carry a bag. Turn those into rituals. Because rituals form identity, and identity dictates income, reputation, opportunity. Sophistication is about choosing presence over passivity, choosing to care more, not less, choosing to bring honor to the mundane. The way you fold your clothes, make your bed, write your emails, all of it adds up. And when it adds up, you walk with an energy that doesn't need to announce itself. It just is. It's baked into the way you carry your cup, hold your pen, enter the room. You don't need to say, "I'm successful." People feel it, and they treat you accordingly. Let me tell you, that's when life begins to shift. Because people of value are drawn to others who carry value. Sophistication becomes your passport into rooms where laziness has no seat. It earns you time with leaders. It opens doors that credentials alone can't. Why? Because people know they can trust someone who lives with intention. If you'll do the little things with elegance, you'll likely do the big things with excellence. So practice sophistication. Not someday, today. Find 3 simple things you do each morning and elevate them. Not for applause, not for Instagram, but for the quiet certainty that you're living at a higher level. Because once you do, everything you touch will begin to reflect that level. And when that happens, when the outer polish meets inner purpose, something powerful begins to form. A loop, a momentum, a rhythm of respect. That's what we'll explore next. The cause-effect loop of self-respect. How your appearance reinforces your identity, and your identity transforms your reality. Let's keep going. There's a powerful loop in life that either lifts you higher or pulls you under. It begins with how you treat yourself when no one is watching, not when the lights are on, not when there's an audience or a paycheck, but in those quiet moments before the day begins. And here's the secret. Every time you show self-respect through your appearance, you strengthen your identity. And every time your identity strengthens, your actions follow. That's the loop. Respect fuels belief, belief fuels behavior, behavior reinforces identity, identity demands respect. And the cycle repeats. Now think about this. How do you feel when you're dressed well, groomed, standing tall? Do you feel timid, uncertain, apologetic? Of course not. You feel grounded. You feel competent. You feel like you can walk into a room and own your space. That's no accident. That's cause and effect. The moment you clean up, the moment you elevate your presence, you begin to rise internally. And what starts in the mirror becomes muscle in your mind. You begin to speak up more. You start standing straighter. You walk into opportunity instead of backing away from it. Why? Because you're not trying to pretend, you're becoming. When you raise your appearance, you're not faking anything. You're feeding the man or woman you're capable of being. You're proving to yourself, I'm worth the effort. And that changes everything. Because here's what most people miss. Self-respect is not a feeling. It's a decision. It's not waiting for motivation to arrive. It's creating momentum through discipline. And appearance is one of the fastest, most visible ways to start that process. Let me give you an example. You wake up late, no time to shave, no time to pick a proper outfit, so you throw on whatever's nearby. You skip breakfast, you rush out the door, already behind, already disheveled. And what happens? You walk into your day as if you owe the world an apology. You shrink in meetings, you doubt your own opinion, you feel invisible. That's not just a bad morning, it's a bad message. You told your subconscious, I don't matter today. And the world responded, okay, but flip it. Wake up with time, stretch, groom, put on something intentional. Not expensive, intentional. Polish your shoes, press your shirt, eat something decent, look in the mirror and say, this is what someone with purpose looks like. Then step into your day. What happens? The conversation shifts, people notice, doors open, you walk differently, you speak with more clarity, not because the world changed, but because you did. You respected yourself, and the world echoed that back. Now that's the loop. And once it starts working in your favor, your entire life begins to ascend. You become the kind of person who shows up prepared, who doesn't need external pressure to look sharp, who operates from internal standards. And let me tell you, that's magnetic, that's valuable. That's who gets paid more, trusted more, respected more. And it all began not with a career move, not with a course or a new connection, but with a mirror, with a decision to treat yourself as someone worthy of effort. This is why appearance matters. Not because we're trying to impress the world, but because we're trying to express who we're becoming. Every time you comb your hair, clean your shoes, button your collar, you're sending a message. I am no longer casual about my life. And that message loops back around. It shapes how others treat you, how they trust you, how they reward you, which shapes how you see yourself again. So the question becomes, are you stuck in a loop of neglect or a loop of respect? Are you living from a pattern of decline or a pattern of dignity? You can change the loop right now, one decision at a time. Start small, be consistent, because self-respect is not something you wait for. It's something you practice until it becomes your natural way of being. And once it is, your presence will speak before you do, and your life will begin to rise to meet the person you've decided to become. Next, we'll take this even deeper. We'll talk about grooming, not just as hygiene or surface polish, but as a metaphor for cultivating your inner life. Because just like your appearance, your character needs pruning, shaping, tending. Let's enter the garden. Let's talk about how grooming mirrors the work of becoming a person of substance. Keep going with me. This is where the philosophy begins to bear fruit. Let's go to the garden. Not the one in your backyard, the one inside you. Because whether you realize it or not, your inner world is a field, and every day something is growing there. Confidence or doubt, clarity or confusion, discipline or disorder. And grooming, simple, physical grooming, is one of the clearest metaphors for how you're tending that inner ground. Every time you clean up, you're not just removing dirt, you're removing drift. You're proving to yourself, I am not leaving my life untended. You see, the weeds of neglect don't need an invitation. They show up unannounced. You don't have to plant chaos, it plants itself. All you have to do is do nothing, and soon your life becomes overgrown. Your energy becomes sluggish. Your conversations become small. Your goals fade into the background, crowded by habits you never intended to grow. But when you start grooming, not just your face, your hair, your nails, but your thoughts, your speech, your intentions, you begin to prune away the excess. You start making space for the person you meant to become. Every morning, your grooming routine is a ceremony. It's a ritual, not for others, but for yourself. The toothbrush becomes a reminder that excellence starts with small things. The comb becomes a symbol of order. The razor is a tool of refinement, and every stroke says, I'm not done. I'm still shaping. I still believe this vessel is worth presenting with care. And if you do this long enough, it stops being about vanity. It becomes about vision. You're not polishing your exterior to hide weakness. You're polishing it to reflect commitment, the commitment you've made to a better life. I often say, how you do anything is how you do everything, and that includes how you prepare in the morning. Sloppiness tolerated in the mirror becomes sloppiness accepted in decisions. Indifference to personal presentation turns into indifference in relationships, in finances, in goals. But grooming, done with discipline, reinforces excellence in all areas. You train your hands to tidy your space, and your mind begins tidying its thoughts. You organize your look, and your calendar starts reflecting the same order. That's the power of symbolic action. It leads the rest of your life. And let me tell you, it's not about perfection. The garden will never be done. There will always be leaves to clear, edges to trim, soil to water. But the point is to keep showing up, to keep tending. Because that's what builds character, not a single grand gesture, but thousands of unseen, repeated ones. When you clean up in the morning, you're not just preparing for the world, you're reminding your soul that it matters. You're saying, I'm worth showing up for. And when you take care of the visible, the invisible follows. You begin to speak with more intention. You take more responsibility for your tone, your language, your presence. You prune your gossip. You trim your complaints. You pull out excuses by the root. That's gardening. That's grooming. That's what it means to live with philosophy. Because the external is just a reflection of what's happening inside. Don't mistake the haircut for the character, but don't ignore the haircut either. It's often the beginning of the rebuilding process. So ask yourself, what kind of garden am I walking around in? Have I let the weeds win? Have I stopped tending my life because it got hard or messy or slow? Or am I still willing to get my hands dirty, pull what doesn't belong, and shape what does? Because the man who grooms himself each morning is often the man who prunes distractions each night. And that man, bit by bit, becomes a man of presence, a man of weight. A man who walks into a room and without a word communicates clarity, care, and character. This brings us to the final point. We've gone from surface to substance, from appearance to identity. But now I want to issue a challenge, not about who you've been, but about who you're becoming. And that challenge is simple. Begin to look like where you're going. Not where you are, not where you've been, where you're going. Let's close with that charge. One final invitation to rise to your next level, starting with how you show up. If you want to change your life, start with how you show up in it. Because life doesn't hand rewards to the wishful, it hands them to the prepared. And one of the most profound decisions you can make is to stop dressing, walking, talking, and thinking like the man you were, and start becoming the man you're meant to be. It sounds simple, and in many ways it is, but it's also sacred. It's the quiet revolution of the self, the private decision to embody your future before it's arrived. That's the bridge between intention and outcome. And that's why I'm asking you now, look like where you're going. Don't wait for success to buy a better shirt. Don't wait for the promotion to start showing up with posture and clarity. Don't wait until your name is called to prepare your voice, your tone, your handshake. Dress like someone with vision. Groom like someone with purpose. Move like someone who's already claimed the life they're chasing. Why? Because the world doesn't reward potential. It rewards proof. And the first proof is presence. Before you say a word, before they know your name, they know your standard. And your standard speaks loudly. If you're heading toward leadership, look like a leader. If you're building wealth, carry yourself like someone who respects money. If you want to be taken seriously, take yourself seriously, starting with how you treat the mirror each morning. I'm not talking about ego. I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm talking about integrity, alignment, matching your outside to the clarity you've begun to cultivate on the inside. So here's the challenge. Starting today, right now, walk into every room, every morning, every opportunity like someone who's going somewhere. Look like your future. Dress like your destiny. Carry yourself with the dignity of a person who's becoming more. Because when you do, the world begins to reflect that image back. Respect flows toward discipline. Reward flows toward readiness. And success, true success, finds those who no longer live like they're unsure. This is your moment. This is your decision. Raise your standard. Refine your presence. And let the world meet the person you've decided to become. Starting now, clean up your appearance, elevate your philosophy, and watch your life rise to meet your new identity.